What's up, family? A MS-13 gang member was deported. A U.S. senator flew to El Salvador to visit him. The media framed it as a mistaking deportation. So, what really happened? Let's see. Let's set the noise aside. Focus on the facts. Who is Kilmar Garcia? Why was he deported? And why is the political left and parts of the media trying to bring him back? You may ask. So, who is Camila Garcia? He's a Salvador national who entered the U.S. illegally in 2011. Over the course of his time in the U.S., here's what public records and ICE documents say. He was associated with MS-13, a gang officially designated as a terrorist organization by El Salvador. He was arrested with other gang members. He was found with cash allegedly marked with gang symbols. He faced accusations of domestic violence, including abuse and battery against his wife, and he was stopped for trafficking activity. He went through the U.S. immigration court system, was given due process, and was eventually given a final deportation order. Was it a mistake, you may ask, right? So CNN and some Democratic politicians are now calling this a mistaken deportation. But let's define that, right? But with no further ado, before I give you guys my insight and we have a conversation, because I want to know you guys' thoughts down in the comments below, let's check out the CNN clip with Scott Jennings and those justifying this illegal or this mistaken deportation. Check it out.
Van Hollen posted a picture of him sitting with Abrego Garcia at a table.
I see these pictures tonight, and I think, boy, the party of women is really covering itself in glory tonight. I mean, I don't understand why the American left falls in love with the worst people. You've got a gang-banging, human trafficking, wife-beating, illegal alien, and a United States senator in a ludicrous display of energy is in El Salvador having Mai Tais and Yahtzee. I do not get it. I do not understand why the left takes on the heroes people like that. I don't get it.
I think
he has an adjudicated deportation order, and you have Democrat public officials falling all over themselves trying to get him back here without thinking through the next step, which is he's literally going to be deported somewhere else.
But he did have due process. Everything we know about him is documented because he did go through the court systems. He was stopped for trafficking. His wife did file these domestic violence charges against him. He was arrested with MS-13 members with a roll of cash that had the eyes and the ears and the mouths of the presidents erased, which is an MS-13 markings. This is all non-disputed.
Average American looking at this case, a lot of conflicting information. Okay, I believe some, I don't believe. An illegal alien came here in 2011, and somehow in 2025, he's still here after having been through the court system, after having been arrested with lots of people in his car, after having all this evidence.
Deport him?
He just did, and now everybody's mad about
Why
it.
didn't
How
Donald
did an
Trump
illegal
deport
alien
him?
take advantage of our system for 14
Why
years
didn't
and
Donald
not
Trump
get
deport
away?
him?
That's the real question. So this wasn't a case of mistaken identity, family, as you guys heard Scott Jennings in his argument and be able to substantiate his point. This wasn't about a clerical mix-up about who he was. Garcia had an adjudicated deportation order. He was ordered to leave the country legally, and the only technical wrinkle is that the judge in 2024 said he shouldn't be deported to El Salvador, citing fears that he could face retaliation from rival gangs. But here's the catch, and a crucial one. If someone fears retaliation from other gang members, that typically implies they're a gang member too. And don't get me wrong, sometimes there's innocent individuals who come across maybe crossfire rival gangs going against each other. But if someone is actually having a hit out for you, obviously you're a rivalry from some point in time. You're a rivalry in their eyes at a certain point in time for them to feel as though they need to come after you because obviously you're going against the very thing they support. In this case, gang members we're talking about, right? And that's exactly what multiple sources confirm. Garcia had deep ties to MS-13, one of the most violent transnational gangs in this world. And it's mind-blowing to me because here's where things get bizarre. U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen flew to El Salvador to visit Garcia and advocate for his return. Yes, advocate for an illegal MS-13 gang member coming into the United States, advocating for his return to the United States after you done heard Scott Jennings on CNN say that he has been taking advantage of the system for the last 14 years. Media anchors question if the U.S. abandoned him. Some activists framed him as a victim of a broken immigration system. Let's put it in perspective, though. This is a person with a confirmed gang affiliation, a violent history, and an official deportation order. Why is anyone flying across the world to advocate for him? They don't even advocate this hard for American citizens in their own state. Mind blowing, right? So then we go into the next segment when I want to show you guys Tom Homan, the border czar, right? Former acting ICE director Tom Homan went on CNN and asked whether the U.S. government bears responsibility for deporting someone who may have been harmed back in their home country. Check it out.
I've seen some people look at this and say they're worried that the stance of this administration when it comes to this is that if someone is deported by accident, that they have no responsibility for them once they are in the custody of a foreign government. What would you say to that?
Well, they're in the custody of El Salvador. He's an El Salvadoran national. He was born in El Salvador. El Salvador has him in custody, and El Salvador decide what happened to him. I mean, again, the El Salvadoran president made it clear he's not going to release him. So again, I'm going to go back. The DOJ, they can fight this out in the courts. As I'm not a part of that. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a prosecutor. So we'll let the courts, decide what the next steps will be.
Even though it was a U.S. immigration judge who said the one place he can't go is El Salvador. I mean, he could have been deported literally anywhere else.
Again, we can keep going back and back, but again, that was years ago. Country conditions were different. That gang no longer exists in El Salvador. He had been designated a terrorist since that time. 2 different federal judges said he's an MS-13 member. A police department said he's an MS-13 member. ICE data shows he's an MS-13 member. El Salvador says he's an MS-13 member. As you know, MS-13 has been designated terrorist. The case has the facts of the case have changed since that first decision. So again, I'll leave it up to the DOJ to argue that case in court, but that is where I stand, and that's my belief.
There you have it, folks. So Homan calmly laid out the truth. Garcia is Salvadorian. He was deported legally. El Salvador has him in custody. The Salvadorian president said he will not be released. Caitlin Collins tried to press Homan, suggesting there was some moral obligation for the U.S. to do more if a deportee is in danger. But Homan flipped the argument. He said, look, this ain't about danger. This is about accountability. Garcia was not deported by mistake. He was removed by law. So, critics say that sending Garcia back to El Salvador violates a judge's prior ruling. But here's what changed. MS-13 has been dismantled inside El Salvador. President Nayib Bukele cracked down on gang violence, has made El Salvador one of the safest countries in the Western Hemisphere, according to recent crime stats. Garcia is now in secure custody, not roaming the streets. So for the basis for the older court ruling that El Salvador was too dangerous for him no longer holds up. So let's ask the obvious question, right? Because the bigger issue, right, is selective outrage. That's the bigger issue. Because why is there more energy behind saving a gang-affiliated deportee than there is behind protecting American families from gang violence? That's what confuses me, I should say, and it confuses to some people out there who may be looking at it from this lens the same way I'm looking at it. There's little outrage when victims of MS-13 face brutal crimes, but when an MS-13 member gets deported legally, activists, media, and even elected officials rally to his side. So this is where ideology trumps logic, and it undermines the credibility of people who claim to stand for justice. But look, Kilmar Garcia didn't slip through the cracks. He went through the system. He got due process. He was found to be dangerous and was deported legally as the law requires. This isn't about compassion. It's about consequences. And sometimes the hard truth is the right one. So let's stop pretending that every deportation is injustice. Some are justice served, and the American public deserves to know the difference. So I also wanted to elaborate on how the media and politics twist deportation cases like Kilmar Garcia's, right? Because now that we've broken down the facts of the Kilmar Garcia's deportation and how it was legal, justified, and rooted in public safety, let's talk about what really sent this story viral. It wasn't the crime. It wasn't the court records. It wasn't the evidence. It was the narrative, the spin. The idea of somehow this man with a gang history and a domestic abuse record is now a victim of America's immigration system. So how does that even happen? And these stories are spun in four easy ways, and how I look at it from a logical perspective. One, they ignore the full record, meaning the facts, because media headlines often leave out key facts. Just as you've seen, what's her name right here? I'll just say her name. What's her name? Can't even think right now. Caitlin Collins. There we go. Caitlin Collins, as you see, she basically left out the key facts. And in this case, MS-13 affiliation, domestic abuse claims in the legal process he received, they led with terms like mistakenly deported or vulnerable immigrant, while ignoring what got him deported in the first place. Then they want to tug on your heartstrings of emotions, the center of emotion, right? Instead of focusing on the facts, the story becomes more about feelings. Fear, hardship, possible danger, emotional language replaces hard evidence. You get what I'm going, people? So the public is told how to feel, not what actually happened. So then they want to insert themselves a moral villain. Cue the US government. ICE becomes the bad guy. The deportation becomes inhumane, quote unquote. The gang affiliation, that's just alleged. The abuse charges, barely mentioned or written off as misunderstandings. And then they want to bring in a sympathetic hero. In this case, it's Senator Chris Van Hollen, visiting Garcia in El Salvador like a diplomatic mission. It's not a legal matter. It's not a legal matter anymore. It's a political cause. And this is how someone with a violent history framed as a political football, and why the American public keeps getting whiplash every time stories like this surface. So look, man, it's mind blowing to me. But if you found this breakdown helpful, like, comment, share, and let's keep the conversation real based on facts and not feelings, people. Let the love supersede the hate. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Until next time, family. Peace.